I'm Tristan Black Ingersoll. This is Black Cats Run. Let's talk about this idea that lactate doesn't work. You see this from elite athletes now, for example, in triathlon, on their YouTube channels, talking about how lactate is not useful. And I would suggest that they don't know how to use it. And there's nothing wrong in not understanding these concepts. They're complicated, convoluted. There's not like a clear consensus. And if you kind of like read one piece of information, you might think, okay, this is what you do. And you try to apply it and it's not going to work. I've had the same experience. And here at Black Cats Run, when we work with our athletes, we try to identify this stuff correctly. And so we look at 3 steps in working with an athlete. Number 1, we want to identify intensity. Number 2, we want to design a training strategy. Once we know what the intensity looks like, what that feels like, what that needs to be, and then we try to evaluate responsively. And I would suggest to you that nobody else out there is providing all 3 of these steps. And I'm going to try to demonstrate to you how the way in which we do this at Black Cats is different than what you might be seeing other people do. So what should this look like? How can we prove that we have a way to train responsively? And by responsively, I mean that we can actively see the development of the fitness and then use that information to redirect what's happening. And I'm further going to assert that if you cannot clearly measure progress in a simple manner, you can put it in a spreadsheet and make a graph, then your training is not effective. Okay? You should see progression, and if you're not seeing it, your training is not what it needs to be doing, what it needs to be doing. And there's opportunity cost. Some training can work, but we're talking about trying to find the most effective way to train. So let's look at this using an example of my blood lactate data over the summer. This first graph is from July 8th. Here's my lactate threshold test. You can see that my lactate threshold was at basically around 300 watts to 310 watts. I'm starting to climb and increase the lactate as I increase intensity. Lactate threshold is the maximum intensity you can reach before lactate starts to accumulate. Here's a test a month later, August 8th. You can see, right, there's been a big improvement. Okay, I'm now going further in intensity without beginning to accumulate lactate in the blood. That means my lactate threshold has improved. We put these together side by side against running speed in miles per hour. It's a significant difference, right? This is a shift. This is what fitness is. You should be able to see this, and that's over 4 weeks. And that was maybe running 50 miles a week, maybe 55, not an incredible amount of time. People will put in 100 hours a month in some cases in endurance sports looking to make improvement and will make little to no improvement. I'm actually a proponent of doing a lot of training. I think it's great to train a lot, to practice a lot. But I also think that you can see improvements with 25%, 20% of the training that people are doing. And the conclusion isn't train less. The conclusion is if you're training so much more and you're not seeing an improvement that can match the scale of the improvement you can get on 20% of what I'm getting here, doing what I'm doing, then your training isn't effective. And I would encourage you to think about, reevaluating your approach. If we look at this data in a table, I did a test this morning where I opened up my test kit and I only had 2 strips left, and I'm getting more strips, but they're not here. So, okay, well, I'll just go and I'll try to do just 2 10-minute efforts. And I did one 10-minute effort at 355 watts, and that was 2 millimoles. And I did another about 10-minute effort at 375 watts, and that was 5.8 millimoles. And man, you feel the difference, okay? It was wicked uncomfortable going up to 375, and it was no surprise when I finished. that it was 5.8 millimoles. In the past, though, I would have thought that was threshold. I would have overestimated that. And so we don't have a complete trend to this next test, but if we just pick a point and we compare across, so there's a 2 millimole, all three of these lines touch on or cross the 2 millimole line. So we'll use that. The 2 millimoles is not lactate threshold. Okay, just to be clear, I'm using 2 millimoles because I have 3 lines and 2 is a value that all the lines have a point on or cross. So at the beginning of July, when I would get up to 2 millimoles, my velocity was a little over 7.5 miles an hour, maybe 7.55, 7.6 miles an hour. In August, that velocity was maybe 8.3, 8.2. And then this morning, here on September 17th, my velocity was maybe 8.7 miles an hour. What does this look like in terms of training progression? Well, here's a graph showing over 9 weeks all of the workouts that I did. And I think there are about 28-ish workouts, so let's call it approximately 30 workouts over 58 days working on threshold. And in this time, I've progressed down, right? Obviously, there's going to be variance. Weather and terrain can sometimes have an impact and change velocity, but this is what we want to see. And this is responsive training. So as long as we're seeing this relationship happen, then we know that the training is going well. If we're not seeing a progression, if we're not seeing the training sessions being sort of tightly clustered, then we're not improving. And then we would use that information to make an adjustment. And making those adjustments to try to reestablish that trend of improvement, that's responsive training. And that's what we try to do here at Black Cats Run. If this is something that you would like to learn more about, you'd like to apply to your own training, we have an Instagram page at Black Cats Run. You're welcome to check that out. Give us a follow and send us a message. We're always happy to talk to people. Even if you just have a couple questions and you're not looking for coaching, we're still happy to engage. Let us know. There's a better way.